Welcome to my tutorial for the M2 method. M2 is a method for blind solving, and it solves only the edges of the cube. Currently, I'm assuming that you use Old Pachman for both the corners and the edges, so this will make your edge solving a lot quicker, and it's just far less moves. So right now with Old Pachman, you will be switching this buffer piece with this target by using a T-perm. You can see it also messes up some corners, but after 2 T-perms, the corners get solved. M2 is very similar, except your buffer is going to be here, and your target position is here. And you switch them by using, well, you guessed it, M2. And it also messes up these pieces and these, just like the corners, but after every 2, they will solve themselves. So first, before we start, I want to go over my orientation and my lettering scheme. So for orientation, I use green on front, white on top, and I use specs for lettering. If you want a little refresher on that, that's just A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X. So M2, just like Old Pachman, has setup moves to the target position. In Old Pachman, this would be your target position, but now you'll be setting up to this one instead. So the important thing with setup moves are that they can't affect this middle layer, or else the method won't work. So you need to make sure that whatever you do doesn't disrupt the middle. Now you might be thinking, what if the piece I need to move is in that middle layer? Well, those are special cases, and I will go over those. So let's just look at a couple pieces for now that are easy to set up, and I'll show you how you would do them. So for this piece here, L, the way you would set that up to your target position would be not L prime U, because that would mess up the middle. Instead, you would do U prime L prime U. So now it's there and it hasn't changed anything. So then what you do is M2 and then reverse those moves. So U prime L U. Now I know this kind of looks a little messed up right now, but every 2 edges you swap, it'll start looking normal. So let's go to T. For T, all you would do is U, R prime, U prime, and then M2, then reverse those, U, R, U prime. So now you can see we cycled the buffer with T with L. Now, like I said before, a full list of all the setup moves will be in the description. I'm just going to show you guys a couple example cycles now. So as you can see, I've got a little bit of a scramble here just to show you how M2 solving works. So first I'll go through what you would memorize and then how to execute it. So in this case, you're going to look at your buffer, which remember it's the bottom here, not this piece. So you look at white, so it's white and orange. That would go here, that's D. Then this goes to H, which goes to M, which then would go down to X. And then since this is yellow and green, that's the buffer, so you don't do anything else after that. So the first piece we would solve here is D. So the setup for D is L, U prime, L prime, U. Then you do M2 and reverse the setup. U prime, L, U, L prime. Next, we would solve H. The way you solve H, now the setup I have in the description for you is what I believe is the best setup moves. And now if you want to move on to bigger blind, like 4x4 or 5x5, you will need to learn new setups, but for 3x3, this is the best way to do it. So you're going to do, for H, it'd be little u prime, L prime, little u, M2, little u prime, L, little u. Okay, so next we have M to X. So for M, what you would do is B prime, R, B, M2, B prime, R prime, B. And then X, you're going to go U prime, L2, U, M2, and then reverse U prime, L2, U. So now I'm going to talk about some special cases that can come up with M2. Basically, all the special cases just happen in this M layer. So specifically for the pieces IC, AQ, and SW. So the easiest of these that you can solve is A. If you get A, it's just a simple M2. That's all you do to solve it. There's no setup. Now, the others aren't as easy. So I'll start by showing you C and W because they aren't too bad. So first of all, for C, the algorithm is this: U2, M prime, U2, M prime. That's the algorithm to solve C. Now to solve W, it's just the inverse of that algorithm. So it's going to be M, U2, M, U2. And those algorithms will be in the description for you. Now the thing to know with these, when you're memorizing, you should be memorizing in letter pairs, meaning 2 letters at a time. And when you're doing that, if either of these letters comes up second in the letter pair, you're going to do the opposite. So essentially, if C is the second letter in a pair, you're going to solve for W and do the W algorithm instead. Or if W is second in a pair, you'll do the C algorithm. The next special cases that can come up are I and S. So first I'll show you the algorithm for I. It's going to go D, M prime, U, R2, U prime, M, U, R2, U prime, D prime, M2. Now the algorithm for S is actually the inverse of that, and it might make it easier to learn because you can just go back and forth between the two and it'll solve the cube. So for S, you're going to do M2, D, U, R2, U prime, M prime, U, R2, U prime, M, D prime. So just like with C and W, when these cases come up in a solve, you're going to do the reverse if it's the second in the pair. So if S comes second in a pair, you will do I. If I comes second in a pair, you'll do S. So now I'm going to show you the final special case that you can get. This is for Q. So when Q comes up in the solve, there's actually 2 different algorithms you can use. I'll list both in the description, but I'll let you know the first one that I'm doing is the better one, and I expect you should do that. But the other one is good to learn as well if you want to learn 4 blind or 5 blind, just any sort of bigger cube, you're going to need to know this other alg. But I'll show you the better one first. So it's U. So the first moves are U prime M prime 3 times. So 1, 2, 3. Then you're going to go U prime M. Then you'll do U prime M prime 4 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the first algorithm. Now the second algorithm should solve it if I do it. So it's the exact same as this one. In terms of what it does, it's just different moves. So maybe you'll prefer it either way. And it is U, B prime, R, U prime, B, M2, B prime, U, R prime, B, U prime. And those are all the special cases. Okay, so now I'm just going to show you a little example of how to deal with these special cases in a solve. So I've got a little bit of a scramble here, and I'll just quickly go over what you would memorize in this case. So first, look at your buffer. You can see it's orange and blue. So orange goes here, that's H, W. Keep in mind that W came second in the pair there. So HW, I, O. And then that's back to the buffer, so HW, I, O. So H you'll solve normally. But now since W is second in the pair, instead of doing the algorithm for W, I'm going to do the algorithm for C instead, because if it's second, you switch them. So that's this. Next, what we have is I, O. Now, since I is first in the pair, you're just going to do the regular algorithm for I. Finally, solve O. And now the cube's solved. So just remember, if I or S come second in the pair, you switch them. And if C or W come second in the pair, you will also switch them. Also, I'm not going to go over how to do cycle breaks because I assume you already know how to do that from normal old Pachman, corners or edges. It's the same thing. But if you have any issue with that, leave a comment and I can always make a video. So there's 2 other things I want to go over before this video ends, and that is flipped edges and parity. So first, I will go over flipped edges. So the way I solve a flipped edge is just like you would an old Pachman. Essentially, you can solve, like you shoot to one side of the target and then to the other. Doesn't matter which order. So for this one over here, I could do NT or TN, either would solve it. So I'll show you that right now I'll do it NT. So for N, the setup would be this. And then for T, you would do, and as you can see, it solved the edges. And I know there were 2 flipped edges in the beginning, but remember, you can only ever have 2 edges or more flipped on a cube at a time. You can't just have one flipped, and that's why they are both solved now. So the final thing I want to go over with you guys in this video is parity. So with old Pachman, this is what your parity would look like. You'd have 2 corners out of place because you did an odd number of T-perms solving the edges, and 2 edges out of place because you did an odd number of Y-perms to solve your corners. So that would leave you with this, and you would just do an R-perm as your parity alg to fix it. And I know I use a weird algorithm for that, don't worry. So that's with old Pachman. Now with M2, this is what your parity is going to look like. The middle layer will be solved on those 2 pieces, like on your buffer and target to be solved, but the middle layer's out of alignment and these 2 edges need to flip. So the algorithm, in my opinion, is a lot easier than with old Pachman. All you're going to do is D prime L2D, M2, D prime L2D, and that solves parity. So to finish off this video, I just have a little example solve here just to show off some of the stuff I've shown in the tutorial. And hopefully you guys are understanding it after this. If you need any more help, leave a comment. I'll be happy to answer, or I could even make another video with more example solves. So to memorize here, I would go from E to Q, H, I, F, B. And that's the end because that's the buffer piece, nothing else. So for E, you would set up, M2, undo setup. Now for Q, it's the algorithm, and then H to I. Now keep in mind, I is second in the letter pair here, so instead of doing the algorithm for I, you're actually going to do the algorithm for S instead. So to solve H, now I is S. So for I, you're going to do the algorithm for S, Next, you're going to go F to B. B. And now the cube is solved. So just one little heads up for parity that I should have mentioned before. The way you know you have to do parity is just like with old Pachman. It's when you have an odd number of edges to solve and an odd number of corners. And if for some reason you have an odd number of one but an even of the other, you messed up somewhere in memorization, because when it comes to these methods, if you have an odd number of edges, there will always be an odd number of corners. The other thing to keep in mind is that parity algorithm only works if you solve edges first. So when you're solving, make sure that you can memorize in any order you want, but to do parity properly, you're going to want to solve the edges, then do the parity algorithm, and then you're going to solve the corners. Anyways, that's all for this video. If you have any more questions, leave a comment and I'll be happy to get back to you.